creators, welcome to another Creators Live interview session. I'm Sana, your host, and during Creators Live interview sessions, we discuss everything you need to know to monetize your skills and expertise. I'm so excited to be joined today by Keck, who is a facilitator, trainer, and experience designer, and who is going to help us discover more about creating cohort courses and cohort experiences for the students and making the most of your cohort courses. So, welcome, Jan, and thank you so much for being our guest today.
Yes, thanks for the invitation. I'm super excited and can't wait to see where the conversations are going to take us today.
Yes, I'm so excited too. And to start, since we are going to be focused on cohort experiences today, I wanted to discuss like the main differences between a self-paced course from the perspective of student and from that of a cohort course. Expect the fact that obviously cohort is for the group and self-paced you can take it individually. So are there any key considerations and distinctions that make these cohort experiences really different from that we are used to see with self-paced courses and more pre-recorded courses?
Yeah, so I have been creating self-guided courses. I've been creating cohort-based courses, and if I think of me personally as a participant, as a student, I've also taken both of them, but very often with a self guided course, you sign up with the best intentions and then you never actually finish it. Like maybe you're really motivated in the beginning, but because there's no real accountability to like watch a video every day or continue to go through the lessons, I feel like the drop off is much higher. And with a cohort based course, I know for myself, I'm I'm putting the dates in my calendar. I'm going to show up. And for that time, I will be learning something. I'll be engaging with the content. So I think just that is one big example. But what I love the most also from the kind of the person running the course is the exchange, the discussions that happen between the participants, between the students. Because I believe that if I create a course, I'm maybe an expert in what I'm sharing, but that doesn't mean that there aren't other experts who are maybe also in the students, and the conversations that they have with each other sometimes deepen the learning in a way, or like talk about examples I could not have come up with. So I love those discussions with groups in a live cohort based course.
Yeah, it also happened to me when I signed up for for example, a 30-hour course. And then if I open my list of courses that I signed up for, I probably never finished like almost 50% of them because they are too comprehensive for me and for this time. So, and with core courses, as you mentioned, it is more in real time. And when there is the group and when the students are competitive, you don't like to fall behind the others. So it also affects like the churn rates and the retention rates, as you mentioned. So as the students are going to be joined together on the course and they're going to learn the material in real time all together, I was curious to know how do you keep things organized so that no student falls behind? Because, for example, when we are taking Safe Pels courses, you can access them anytime. For example, you can rewatch some parts for yourself. And with cohort courses, you have to all the students have to pass through the same material. So how do you make sure that all of them retains the material until you can come up to the next topic or the next session?
Yeah, I think there's some things that I have control over and other things that I don't have control over. And all I can do is make the most of how I design the session to make sure that it's engaging, that it's not me just running a
Yeah.
lecture and basically recreating a self-guided course. Like if I do a live cohort and all I do is have some PowerPoint slides behind me and I just talk nonstop for an hour and then I say goodbye everyone, then of course they're not going to really learn because it feels a waste of their
Yeah.
time. They could have watched that in the recording. So when I design something, it's usually very interactive. There's going to be, if it's virtually or in person, there's going to be small group discussions, breakout rooms, and exercises that gets them to experience something, because the more they also feel they're um, they're having an experience, like they're having some emotional reaction to the things that we're talking about. They're sharing stories with each other. Maybe they're listening to my stories. All of those techniques, and then switching it up, help making it more memorable.
Yeah. And like, how do you know that they are ready to come to the next lesson? For example, if we are in a face-to-face classroom, we can like see their gestures, like follow their mimics to see if they got everything that was covered. And when it comes to courses, how do you make sure that everyone managed to grasp all the material until coming to the next session?
I use something that I call micro engagements. It's a way for me to read the room when we can't be in the same room together. Like you said, in person,
Yeah.
you could see people's facial reactions, you could see their body language. Online, I think there's two big challenges. One is, well, if people have their cameras off, we can't see anything. If they're not engaging in the chat, we have no idea if they're even still sitting at the
Yeah.
computer, right? Um, but even if they did have their camera on, we can't really tell if somebody's looking at you and paying attention to the session, or if they're writing an email, or if they're browsing social media, watching a YouTube video. We can't really tell. So I made it a habit to constantly keep checking in with my group in those really small asks for engagement. And that could be, give me a thumbs up if you're like ready to go to the next section. And they could give me like a real thumbs up in the camera. They can use the reaction
Yeah.
buttons if we're on Zoom. They could write something in the chat. And usually I switch this up whenever I've used something for a while. I don't want it to get boring, so I might ask them for like, give me an okay sign, or give me like a finger wiggle, or just give me a head nod, right? Anything that gives me some quick feedback on how things are landing, and of course also making sure that there is time for questions. And again, those discussions to me are sometimes the most valuable, and it's very easy to just pack a session full with content, like information. I want them to learn everything, so I'm just going to put everything in there. But I learned it's often less that's better. So less content, more experiences and more discussions, they'll walk away with something that they'll actually remember more.
Yeah. The practical part of it, the discussions, make it really memorable and make it to retain the material better. And the engagement ways that you've mentioned are really great to keep them on check and to see if they are reacting, see if they are still with you. And another challenging thing that I feel like about cohort courses is the managing all the experience. Because when we are doing a recorded course that can be accessed by anyone at any time, we do like the 80% of work beforehand and before the launch, and we give this ready course for the students. But when it is a cohort course, you like keep doing things, keep editing your content, keep engaging with your students in real time. So, are there any ways or time management ways or task management ways that help you be on track and keep everything really, really organized?
Yeah, I mean, you want to have some kind of idea of what the course is going to be like, right? The same way with a self-guided course, you want to have your structure, your like different modules and lessons thought out before. Um, but then I also like the flexibility that comes with it. uh, I love asking people at the like starting at the second session, hey, what are your takeaways from last session, or what are the open questions from last session? So we start with that to kind of make sure that we connect those different pieces together. And sometimes that means, oh, I realized there's something that was missing that we didn't have a chance to talk about last week, and I can implement that in like the next one. So I fell in love with this flexibility of, yes, I have this structure, I know my content, But then what happens is usually I spend the day before a session redesigning what I had planned and making sure that it kind of touches where we left off the week before.
Yeah. And so do you cover the questions before every session, like the questions for the previous session? And yeah, and then you can come to the main content.
Yeah, and sometimes I even have a separate session that is just answering questions. So I've ran cohorts where it was for 5 weeks. It was a virtual facilitator training, and every Tuesday we had our it was a 90-minute or 2 hour session, which was the training, the content. And then every Thursday, there was 1 hour where we would meet, where I would not have any content prepared. It just is continuing the conversations that we started and maybe ran out of time for, or new questions that came up since they started integrating and applying the things that they've learned. And those office hours, I called them, sometimes were almost as valuable, if not more valuable, than the planned content that I had, because the questions are just super tangible, right? It's trying to apply maybe some theory into practical, um, like running workshops, running meetings, running trainings.
Yeah, totally. Because when you're doing the course live, there may be things that you haven't even planned. But when the moment comes, you need to implement that specific activity that you haven't even planned. You start doing it. About the experience that differentiates the scored experiences from individual learning experiences. I wanted to know, how does a cohort course bring this new experience to the students? For one thing is that when it is a group, for example, students hold each other accountable and are engaged together in the same topic. So what are other ways that cohort courses can add to a learning experience besides the other methods?
I think what you mentioned is probably the what I believe some of the biggest value is you're doing it with other people and you're getting to know the other people. I usually start every cohort with a kickoff session that is doesn't really have a lot of content. Like I'm not teaching a lot. The main focus, the main purpose is to help people connect with each other and start to build this um, a sense of community, a sense of belonging. I want them to feel that it's a safe space where they can ask questions and like experiment and get to know each other, because there's been more than once that people who attended some of my sessions then later stayed connected and might have even collaborated on projects. And again, that's the part that you wouldn't get from a self-guided course. Much harder to get to know the other students through, like, even if there's a messaging option under like the video lessons, it's hard to actually get to know someone that way.
Yeah. You mentioned the community is one of the main differentiators. And I remembered I signed up on a course by a university. It was a university course. And I was expecting to get to know other students, come from different backgrounds, like to ask my questions. I felt like this really excited. And when we joined the course, I didn't feel like asking questions. It was like awkward to me to ask questions or participate to the discussions or anything of the sort. I think it comes from the facilitation and how the instructor facilitates the course. So I was curious to know, how do you create this sense of community and how do you create this sense of belonging and a self space for your students to be free to tell whatever they want, to share their ideas and to contribute to the lesson?
I think a really big thing to keep in mind is how big is the cohort,
Yeah.
right? I think it's maybe hard to create a community if there's only 3 people. It's also probably hard if there's like, let's say, 100 people, because um, most of my cohorts, I want to say, were between maybe 10 to 25 people. And I think that's the kind of ideal number where there's enough people in there where you can find things that you have in common with each other. And that's actually one of the activities that I have them play in the beginning is I send them to breakout rooms and I tell them, okay, you have to find 10 things that you have in common with the other person or the other 2 people if it's a group of 3. And the most unique things that you have in common win. So ideally, it's something that you in your group share, but nobody else in this cohort shares with
Yeah.
you. And people come up with some really unique and different things, and that's kind of the first thing that they connect on. And when I think about helping people connect, I, I often talk about building a campfire, because to me it's a process. It takes time. Building trust and connection is not something that happens instantaneously. You need to kind of build up to it, and ideally start with something that is really low risk. So just asking people what they have in common, very small risk. I guess you need to chat with someone, and might be a bit more risky for some people than others, but most of the time people have no problem engaging with that activity. And then maybe in the next round, I'll ask them a slightly deeper question, ask them to share a bit more, do something a bit further outside of their comfort zone. Because the sooner we get our participants, our students, to take a risk that actually is maybe a bit more uncomfortable, but then they realize, oh, we're all doing it together and this wasn't so bad, the more those connections, the more the learning actually happens. And yeah, one of my other favorite questions to ask in cohorts, because I don't like the "so what do you do" question, because I feel like it's very overused, especially if you're working in any like business environment. I love asking, "What's your favorite part of your job?" And people usually light up when they talk about it, and it's a very different energy around it. But it also gives people some context of, hey, what does this person do outside of learning this course?
Yeah, that's really interesting. And you mentioned about the breakout rooms. I was curious to know if you plan the participant or which participants should be in which groups, or do you do it randomly?
Just because of timing, and like on Zoom, I very often just let it randomize, because I know there'll be more breakout rooms throughout the whole cohort. In the end, hopefully everyone will have met everyone else, but um, I
Yeah,
can't really plan ahead. There's only been a few times where I created what I call a home pod. So it's the same group of people that would meet once every session, either at the beginning or at the end, to do a bit of a debrief, and with the hope that they will connect a little bit deeper.
yeah,
What I've now done, I think, is it really only makes sense if there's a reason to have a home pod. Like, how do I curate the people who are in the same group? If there's a reason for me to do it, let's say they're close to each other locally, and there are different local chapters around the world that might have similar challenges, I think it makes a lot of sense to give them some extra time to connect.
yeah. Well, the reason I ask this is that usually during a course, whether it's a FaceTime, whether it's live, there is this group who is constantly active, who constantly contributes to the lesson. And there is this other group who doesn't really like sharing, who doesn't really like participating. They could like listen totally, they could actively listen and grasp everything, but they would not be like to show any engagement. So they give this responsibility of leading the chorus, so to say, to the people who are constantly active. So, are there any ways that you want bring these people into the sessions, the ones who are not showing any activity or any engagement?
Yeah, I actually just ran a workshop on that exact topic at a conference last week,
Oh,
which was called How to Include and Engage the Quiet Ones. And one of the things that we realized, or that people realized in this workshop, is there's more than one reason why somebody is not engaging or quiet. There's actually probably hundreds of reasons why somebody is not engaging, from things, again, that you can't control, like they had a bad meal and they're not feeling well, or
or they hadn't meal
something
at
else is
all.
troubling them. Yeah. So there are many things that you can't really control, but if it's somebody who is maybe a bit more introverted, shy, or reserved, you need to create a space where they feel comfortable to, like I said earlier, ask a question, raise their hand, contribute. But that doesn't mean that everybody needs to raise their hand to contribute. The great thing about virtually is there's lots of other ways we can get people to participate. And I actually believe that chat is a very useful tool in that way, or even asking people to write something down for themselves. So I often include time for people to think about their answer when I ask a question before I invite people to unmute. Um, I used to be a person that needed that. Like when you ask me a difficult question, I need a moment to process my own thoughts. Once I figure out what I want to say, then I will raise my hand. But if all that happens is somebody asks a question and then whoever has their answer first raises their hand, starts talking, I can never form my thoughts. So now when I ask a question, I want to make sure that there's time for people to think about their answer. I might invite them to write it down, write it in the chat. And then before I again invite everyone to unmute, I might send them to a breakout room where they get to share it with like one or two other people. Because there's a lot of research that shows that most people are more comfortable sharing something in a smaller group
Yeah.
than in front of a large group. And often that also means if they shared it in the chat, they shared it with a smaller group, they gain that confidence and feedback that, hey, what I shared was valuable, that they're more likely to then raise their hand once they come back to the main room. So it's like this combination of things. I call it the engagement spiral. So starting from like having one person do something by themselves, then smaller groups. And then when they come back, I might even say, hey, write a short version of what you shared in the chat. Or was there somebody in your group that shared something really interesting that we all should hear? And then I would invite them to elaborate on that. So that way, I'm not fully putting them on the spot, but I'm also engaging different people to share, and it's not always the same voices in the room.
Yeah. That kind of feels like a step by step process of getting out of your comfort zone because some people are really good risk takers and they can like count no seconds and say count me in, and some people need a little bit more time to adapt to the pace and everything that is happening. And also during the core courses, when everyone is learning the material at the same time, it is obvious that not everyone grasps the material right in the same amount of time. For example, some people would need more time to process things, some people would need more time to retain the material. So I was curious to know if it is the job of the facilitator to make sure that no one falls behind.
That's a really good question. And I would say it really depends on what's the environment. Because I feel like if you're a teacher in school, I definitely think you have a much bigger responsibility to make sure nobody's falling
Yeah.
behind and making sure that there's systems in place that if somebody is falling behind, they have the support that they need. If I'm thinking of adults signing up to a course, like it's not mandatory for them to do it, they want to learn. It's their responsibility to take what they need to get out of it. It's my responsibility to make sure that I manage the energy in the session if it's a live cohort, that I make sure that I create the right environment where they can learn to the best of their possibilities. But in the end, if somebody's not showing up, then that's their decision, and I can't really do anything about it.
Oh, okay, I get it. And with the self-paced courses, we also have the curriculum with the all the activities that we want to include, etc. And I was curious to know if you also create a curriculum for a cohort course
You mean that is available afterwards or just for my own planning?
for your own planning. I mean,
Yeah, definitely. Like I do have, like I mentioned earlier, a bigger outline of what each session will cover, but then it gets customized about a day before to make sure that I adjust it based on what the group needs. Sometimes there's also content that I was planning to talk about, but it doesn't fit in. Like we just run out of time. And either that is okay, or I actually record then a self guided video that I will post to the community so they can watch that in between sessions.
yeah. And what about for the learner? Do they learners do they already know that, for example, they will be able to this and that by the end of the course, or not?
I think it all depends on kind of what how you market your course, right? Um, I usually don't give the full curriculum, like exactly what is covered in each session. There's going to be like a sentence per session, but not detailed. And yes, ideally they will know what they're going to be able to do or learn at the end, because that's the best way you get them to take action and like sign up.
Yeah, because you're also flexible, and you some of the things that you plan to do would not take place, or some other things that you didn't plan you decide to include in the curriculum. So I was curious to know where are the what key considerations you take into account when doing this curriculum, when deciding on the topics that you want to cover during the course.
I don't know if there's a specific process that I follow. Yeah, I'm not actually quite sure. I'm thinking of a course that I've been building right now, and it's based on a book that I'm writing, and it is kind of following the same structure of building a campfire, right? So you have to gather your materials first, and then you have to ignite the first spark, and then you have to add your kindling on top, and at the end you can kind of build up and nurture the fire. So those are my sections. There's 5 different pieces that I'm talking about, and each section will be one lesson. So sorry, one module, and then within that module, different lessons. So that's kind of the structure that I'm building. So there is a bit of a beginning, an arc, and an end. It Yeah, I don't know if I can describe it more in terms of my process right now.
Oh, okay. And what about the format? Because, for example, you can have a live course and a live session. Are there any other formats that you use to enhance the learning experience for the students, or any other activities that you like to include?
So what I usually start with is right when somebody signs up. So this is when individuals sign up on the thank you page. They get a little video message that gets them answering some questions from me, especially around the idea of like, what's your expectation for the course? What are you hoping to be able to do or know at the end of it? And there is a community where everything is hosted. So after they watch the video, they get access to the community where I invite them to create their profile picture, write a little bio, introduce themselves, so they can connect with each other before we have the first live session. Because the tricky thing is, everybody signs up at a different time.
Yeah.
Until we have that first live session, we're not really doing anything synchronously. So I'm trying to build some things that help them get to know the community platform, get to know each other. Often I already give them access to a short pre recorded course. So if they're like, I just signed up, I want to get started right now, they have something to do. But then if they sign up and right before the first live session, it's not mandatory, it's like a bonus. So trying to, yeah, create different elements where they can uh, take action when they're passionate in the beginning, and then throughout the course, I usually upload the replays. So if anybody missed a session live, they can watch that. There'll be different actions for them to do and things to share in the community every week. Although I'm not a huge fan of homework, because I know most people will only take the time that they have for the session and then don't do much in the time in between. I always encourage them to do it. It's, like I said, not mandatory, but I reward them by giving them feedback on things that maybe they're sharing or have questions about. So there is an incentive. If you want to learn more, you engage more, you're actually going to get more out of it.
So yeah, so do you set the timeline beforehand, so everybody who is going to sign up, or who is willing to sign up, already knows that the real sessions are going to start on this particular date, or you just wait for your desired group to gather until you begin the sessions?
I always give them the dates, because number one, they have a deadline for when they need to sign up for.
Yeah.
And I, even again, looking again personally, if there's a session that is in a different time zone, I would not sign up. And uh, I think it's just, yeah, it should be that people know what time the sessions are. Or if not, at least give them a full refund if then the timing doesn't work out. But I don't like to adjust it based on making sure that everybody's available. I'd rather make sure I'm available, which is the most important, and then find the people who can make it for that session. But having said that, my last cohort, I actually offered two different timings. So I did the same session twice a week. One was in my morning time, one was in my evening time, to allow people from, like, we had people from Malaysia and India and Europe in like one session, and then people from North America and like the West Coast of the US in the afternoon session. Um, so they could all find a time where it's during their day and not in the middle of the night.
Yeah. And what if like more people sign up than you expected? For example, you mentioned that the optimal amount is like 10 to 15 people, but let's say 50 people sign up for the course. Are you going to like pick the groups or run the same course in different groups based on their locations, based on their time zones?
Usually I have a cap of like 24 people for those types of courses. So there's no more spots, and then they'll just have to wait for the next time I run it. But if there was, let's say, another 24, like if it was really double the size, I could see myself just running the same session on, again, similar to what I just shared, two different timings. So they could participate. Or maybe there's a second person that can support me with running the session. So each individual has a bit more time to talk to someone, to ask questions. Like the office hours that I shared earlier, maybe the training is for everyone, but then there's office hours for like smaller groups.
Yeah. And a little bit about the main content and the main activities of the course. What's your approach of picking the activities that could be suitable for a cohort course? Because what can you plan for one individual person to do cannot always be suitable for a group. So, what are the main activities that you're holding during your courses?
So I love to follow the experiential learning circle. I don't know if you're familiar with experiential learning theory, but that's something for anybody who's interested to maybe Google and kind of do a little deep dive in. But that often talks about, you first have people have an experience, and then in the debrief you think about like what happened, how did that feel, and then you move into action. So how we're going to apply this. So very often I think of, okay, what are the activities, the exercise, the experiences that I want to do that have people have some insights, that then through the discussions they will figure out what the learning is and how they're going to apply it. Um, and those become kind of my, like, the bigger pieces in let's say a session, and then I figure out the other things kind of around that.
Yeah. It's also a great way, like, to receive feedback from the side of your students. I wonder if you organize this like feedback sessions, or maybe you just do like in forums, and how do you include the feedback of your students for your next sessions?
It's something that I'm still experimenting with. Like, I've done a couple of different things, and sometimes it works really well, and other times it didn't work so well. Especially, what I think I want to stop doing is finish your session and then send out an email with a feedback form that people can fill out on their own time. The the completion rate is really low on those, I find. So I've experimented, and I'll share like a few things I've tried and where I'm at currently. One of the things was, anybody who fills out the feedback form, they get another bonus, or you can win something, like trying to incentivize them to fill it out by a certain date. I've also done, in the last session, we're actually filling it out at the same time. So I'll try to reduce my questions then to just a few, and we'll fill it out, usually using a tool like Mentimeter, where they can scan a QR code or click a link, and they'll answer the question. We can actually go through them and show the results as they're answering. I prefer that a lot more, because uh, completion rates, like almost everyone participates in those, so at least I have something, and then I could still send out the more detailed form afterwards, which usually also includes me asking for testimonials that then I can use. to put on the page for the next cohort. Especially if there are some stories that get shared where somebody has like a big transformation, I often use those in my emails, in my marketing, and so I want to make sure that I capture them somehow.
Yeah, and also feedback can be used for you to self-evaluate yourself as a facilitator, as a trainer, as an instructor. I wonder if you take time to evaluate the course once this group of cohort is over and you're about to move to your next session. How do you evaluate your results? What things do you take into consideration to improve for your next sessions?
It's such a great question, and I hope anybody who's listening to this is now thinking, "Oh, I should evaluate myself, not just ask for feedback from my participants." I actually think that giving myself feedback is more valuable often than the feedback from participants, because I sit down after every session and I have a little kind of template that I fill out that starts with what was my energy level today and what was the energy level of the group, because that kind of weighs all the things that I'm going to write afterwards. Because there are some days where I feel really tired or I'm about to get sick, that I know, okay, I shouldn't be so hard on myself for this. Or I know big world events happen and then the group's energy is really low. So always taking that into consideration before I do my other notes. But I usually write down, okay, what went well that I want to keep, what should be improved next time, what are some new ideas that I want to try out next time, and anything else that comes up. There's like a place for like any other thoughts, but those are the three questions I usually try to answer right after I finish the session, or maybe the day after. And for the next cohort, if I'm running the same session again, I will review that before I make the changes to my slides, to the content. So I make sure that I actually improve every single time. So one cohort that I've ran for um, over 10 times, I feel like I'm now at a point where I know exactly how to structure it. I know each section is really good, and it works, and I just have to repeat it.
Yeah, so you keep records of every session, you keep them recorded and not just like your thoughts.
Yeah, I use Notion
Yeah,
as the tool where I often plan my session and then record the feedback. So it's all organized in different databases and pages. So I can always go back and look at, oh, last time I ran this session was on this date with this group, and here's the feedback.
yeah. It is also one of the main strategies of school teachers when they're planning their lessons and when they're writing these lesson plans. It's always this self-evaluation part when they have to like go back to what they covered during the lesson. So I think the same principles also apply here.
Yeah, I mean, it's so easy to forget.
Yeah.
Like I ran a session 2 weeks ago and then I got really busy because I went to a conference. I haven't done my self reflection yet. And I already know, looking back, I'll need to look at all my slides, all the content, the photos that I've taken to even remember what happened. And that's only 2 weeks ago. So if I don't run this workshop again until next year, I will have forgotten everything.
Yeah, planning also takes time because when you set your goal that I'm going to keep the records of this and this points, and then you have to accommodate a little bit of your time to like keep those records and everything. But I think it's worth it in the end. It's worth to invest this time in your process.
Yeah. If you want to make your course or your cohorts the best possible, like that's the fastest way to get there, is using your own feedback plus the feedback from the students, and then making changes for the next time you run it.
Yeah. And a little bit about like presenting your core course to your students. For example, let's say if you have never covered that topic before and you're about to run this course for the first time, how do you like present your course in a way that could attract your students, where your students can resonate and find, oh, that was something I was looking for?
So maybe I'll tell you a story of what not to do first, and then the things I've learned from
That would
it.
be great.
Um, yeah, the very first and this was a self-guided course. The very first course that I created with my business partner at that time was um, for people, teaching them how to create their own videos for their business. So not related to the content I talk about now, but we were so excited because we ran this as a workshop with people, and people really loved it. They got some great insights from it. So we're like, we have to turn this into a self-guided course that we can sell and make money while we're sleeping. That was kind of our goal.
Yeah.
Just put it together, put it on a website, and then people will just buy it. Well, we spent a year creating content. Like, this was a very high production value. Like, we were doing professional videos and commercials for companies, so our bar was very high. So it took us a very long time to put it all together. And then when we finally released it, one person bought it. That was it. And we're like, we needed like thousands of people to buy it to actually get a return on our investment of like that time and energy. And we didn't realize that through that whole time of building that course, we did not speak to our customers again. Like, we had this idea of what we thought they needed, built that, and then realized nobody needs that, nobody wants that. And I think that's the difference. They need it, but they didn't want it. And if I was to now use the strategy that I've been using successfully to launch courses, it's talk to your customers, talk to your students, figure out what their pain points are, listen to the language, how they describe those pain points, because that exactly will be what's selling the course. It's not what's included and what's the content, but what are the challenges that are going to go away? What are the problems that are going to be smaller or disappear after completing the course? And if you can get that language right, then they're going to sign up.
Yeah, because most of the times I feel like it's not only your story, it should have happened to lots of more people. Because what we when we have this exciting idea in our minds, the first thing that comes up to our minds is like really come to launch and present the content and everything. However, we forget that first we should like create this demand and let people know that we are about to launch it, etc. And when the content, when we're done with the content with 100%, only then we should think, only then we start thinking about, oh, who is going to buy this really? So I think that's a really nice point to start building this relationship with your future students, with your
Hmm.
prospects right at the beginning.
Yeah, and if I take another example, I am writing a book right now, and it's not done. I'm maybe like 60% done of writing the content for the book. But almost a year and a half ago, I said, I'm going to start writing a weekly email with content that's going to be maybe in the book, and I want to get your feedback. And I started getting people to sign up for that email list. I have now, I think, like 1,200 people who are on that email list. And I know once the book is ready, there's going to be a lot of people who are interested in buying the book, because they've been already hearing me share about it since like for over a year. And that's different than building something in secret and not telling anyone about it. And then when it's ready, you're like, ta-da, here it is. Come and buy it, right? I'm trying to build a relationship with people where they can also follow the process and get excited about the milestones that you're going to hit. So yeah, that should come first before you even design any of the content, is talk to your
Yeah,
students.
I feel like the course business and coaching business, training business is more of a relationship based business. So that's one of the most important things to take into consideration. And to kind of like sum all these things up, what would be like your main piece of advice for listeners who are about to design their first cohort experience that comes maybe from your personal experience?
Um, I think I said it a few times, but talk to your students. Like, one of my favorite questions to ask people right after they register is, why did you register? Like, that gives me so much information of, like, I put together a sales page and I put together all of this messaging. What actually made people click purchase? That is such good information. Plus, I often share what people said anonymously as like social media posts or content again, because if one person signed up for a specific reason, there might be more people who have the same reason who might sign up. And then the second thing is I usually get to know people very quickly. Like I don't want anybody who joins a cohort to be just a number. Like I want to know their names. Luckily, if we're on Zoom, I can always read people's names. I'm going to welcome them by their name. I'm going to uh, ask them about their life, about themselves. I'm not just there to have this one directional communication. Like this is an exchange. And I really think that often I'm not the smartest person in the room. Therefore, if I let other people share, I'm learning something. Everybody else is learning something. They feel appreciated. Everybody wins.
Yeah, that also creates like a personal touch with people, because when you sign up with a course and you feel like you are appreciated, you present a value from yourself, then this relationship is built on a very important point from this point on. So that's a nice a point to mention.
Yeah, I think the going back to how do you get people to sign up if they know, like, and trust you, then they will sign up, and that's just the start of the relationship. So how can you make sure that they become raving fans? Is like really care about the outcome of the course for them.
Yeah, because that's not only the core content of the course that matters. We talked about experience that matters. For example, if I'm to sign up with a course that I liked the experience, although the contents may not be like that great, that we all imagine to be as comprehensive, to be great and everything. If I like my experience with this facilitator with this particular course, I'm more likely like to sign up for their other courses as well.
Yeah, exactly. That's how you're gonna build raving fans.
Yeah, loyal fans. Thank you. Thank you for sharing everything with us, Jan. And that's it for our Creators Live interview session today. If you're interested, you can find the resources and the blog page of this interview in the description box. And if you have any questions that you would like to ask, you can leave them in the comments, and our team will get back to you to answer all these questions. And we'll see you in the next Creators Live interview session. Bye.